welcome back guys. Today I'm going to be showing you how I go about starting all of my onions for the year. Also going to be planting some last year's stock in large containers for seed collection later this summer. And we're going to do a winter carrot harvest. I'll show you how I'm storing all of my carrots in the ground over winter. So I had a fair bit of onion seed left over from last year, so I needed to do a germination test. Typically onion seed only lasts about a year before the germination really drops off. It does depend on the variety and how it is stored. Seeds stored in your freezer will prolong their life. So I'm just using a mason jar with a screened sprouting lid. This works great. I rinse them twice a day. These are red of Florence. These are actually 2-year-old seed. And January 15th, I started everything. It is the 25th now, so 10 days. These ones are just starting to pop, so I can't quite tell the success rate on them just yet, but I got a few hundred seed in there, and so I should have quite a few that germinate. Rosmary Inverno, and I just have a damp paper towel on the top here to keep them from drying out if they're still on the side of the glass. This is last year's seed, and they're germinating pretty good. Probably 80% or so. And Rosa di Milano, love this variety. Nice red barrel shape, heirloom, and the germination on these really good. And some Kelsey. This is a very large white yellow onion. It's open pollinated. It actually holds the world record for size. I forgot to mention I soaked my seed in the jars for about 8 hours, and then I started rinsing twice a day. And then I put these ones in the paper towel after I soaked them in the jar. Germination on these for last year's seed looks really good too. I'm impressed. You do need to be careful if you're using paper towel. If it's really sturdy, you don't want your seed growing into the paper towel because when you pull them off, it'll damage your seed. So it is a bit better to use a Kleenex or a TP because it just breaks down a lot easier. But as long as you're careful and you just make sure they're not growing into your substrate here, then you should be fine. Such a beautiful day out. Let's go harvest some winter carrots. We've got 3.5 beds here that are thinned out a bit, just from harvesting from late summer and fall. I've broken into one bed so far this winter. Right here. Probably just go off of this one. Got a bed here and here that are covered with too much snow from shoveling the drive here. But this is also a carrot bed right along here. And we're just gonna go off of this one now because I've already broken into it. Look at these beauties. Nice and firm, really sweet. Tops aren't green or frosted. They're not damaged at all. And so for this bed, I've put a top dressing on in summer. It really protects the tops, the shoulders of the carrot from going green at all. It also helps with overwintering. It's kind of like a mulch layer, right? A mulch layer of compost. You can also add, straw or leaves and then put your tarp down. If your climate's very cold and you don't get a lot of snow, you probably want to mulch a lot more than I did. Don't even have to take the tops off of some. These are gorgeous. They also get very sweet when they're overwintered in the ground. All the sugars come out. So for me, this has been working wonderful. This is the second year that I've really done this to this extent. Oh yeah. One of those yellow worms. But they're all pretty nice. You get the odd split ones. Most of the carrot tops are decomposing quite nicely. Ooh. Another carrot. I also have some smaller leeks in this area right here. This is a strawberry and dwarf cherry bed. I grew leeks and beets in here. Then in the fall, I planted some garlic. So let's see how these leeks are holding up. Fun to be harvesting in the middle of winter. Here's a nice one. The beauty. Tops got mangled. These are so extremely hardy. They usually always come back the next year. There we go, some food midwinter. So let's get all this onion seed planted out. I'll show you my favorite soil mixture and containers for starting onions. A lot of my fruit trees actually didn't drop all of their leaves this year. Last year it happened mildly, and this year more extreme. I might do a little video talking about that, as well as some pruning. I'm no expert on fruit tree pruning, but I will show you kind of what I'm doing this year. I use slightly warm water just because everything is kind of cold. So I'll take you around back here to my crazy outdoor potting shed. I try to keep things somewhat organized, but it's a little bit out of hand right now. I just recently got a whole bunch more containers from the property where I grew up. Tree plug flats, got a huge stack of them, which is super awesome because these range from about $4 to $6 a piece. We have a snow tunnel here. These are 6 times thick, I believe. So these last a while. All right, so I'm going to show you my favorite soil mixture for growing onions before they go out into the garden. So what I like to do is 2 different ways, and this year is a 3rd way actually, because I needed to do a germination test. So in this case, this year, I'm just going to pick out the ones that have germinated and sow them directly into my tree plug flats, just 1 per cell, because I know it's germinated. 2 years ago, I just sowed directly into my flats with this rich mixture. Another technique I do like to do, which I did last year, is just starting a whole bunch of onion seed really close together in an open flat, and then waiting till they come up to the little seedlings and then prick them out. So the British term goes, transplant them basically into my tree plug flats. Always using the tree plug flats. These are the larger size, my favorite container for growing onions. I've done them in the past just all clustered together, and I really prefer just getting them all singled out. That way the whole root system comes out and they just get a super start. So basically this mix is about 50% sea soil. I've got perlite, medium grade, you can use any grade. Peat moss, just straight up peat moss. You can also, use like a pro mix, something already mixed up and stabilized. I'll put just a little bit of lime in this. Usually it's a 1/4 cup for every 6 gallons of peat moss. You want to just bring the pH up a little bit. It's pretty acidic. It's about 4.5 to 5. The coconut coir, this is closer to neutral, anywhere from 6.5 to 7. And so actually mixing both of these together, like balance it out somewhat. But I will add just a little bit of lime as well. I actually really like using oyster shell flour if you can get it. It's quite expensive, but it has that added calcium in there as well, which is good for adding to the coconut coir, because that is just one negative effect of the coir, is that it can bind a bit of calcium. Got my gallon scoop here, approximately 3 of these. 1, 1, 1. I want it quite coarse and really heavy on this beautiful compost here. So I would love to be using my own compost. That's something I want to work on for the future, a hot compost for seed starting. About a 1/4 cup for 6 gallons. So I put 2 gallons in here. So, just a couple tablespoons here. Okay, so that actually looks really good. I'm not going to change it at all. That's 50% sea soil, and the other 50% a combination of peat moss, coir, and perlite. That would be its root, because the husks come up out of the ground. So some of these might need a little bit deeper of a hole, actually. A little bit time consuming, but pricking out was more so. That's so great. So many germinated from last year's seed, just a few that didn't. So with onions, you want to keep it on a light cycle of 12 hours of light, 12 hours of dark, in the 70s for the daytime temperature, and in the 60s ideally for the nighttime temperature. But just, a little bit cooler in general compared to some other crops. So since this seed is already germinated, I am going to put these ones directly under light, so I don't want to miss them sprouting up, because if there's no light and they're sprouted, even one day can really elongate seedlings. Onto the second tray of Kelsey here, and you can just do a germination test of a certain percentage or just even pinch of seed to see how it turns out. I didn't want to wait around the extra 10 days, so I just went ahead and germinated all my seed. The germination actually is a lot better than I was expecting. I did keep my seed in the freezer, so that's probably why it seems really viable still. I am focusing more on red storage varieties this year. I will have 2 trays of these Kelsey. If you're interested in a complete onion growing guide for long day onions, check out my video I made last February. Grab some other containers because I actually have a bunch of rosemary from last year that never got transplanted out, and I've been keeping them alive for a long time now. Also some peppermint I'm going to be transplanting into these containers. So I've got some rosemaries in here growing from last year. I brought them in early enough and they seem to be growing. Sometimes they will just die off, but I think the trick is you just got to bring them in early enough. And here's my tray. These are the same plants from the same start date last February. A couple of them I think have died, but I've just been keeping them alive for pretty much a full year now. Same here with the peppermint. I just wasn't finding it at the nursery, and I figured it's cheaper to do the seed. I have time, and I've been wanting peppermint for a little while now. I have spearmint on the property, but peppermint is nice as well, so been just barely keeping them alive. So I thought it would be fun to do a little experiment here and divide these up and plant them in here. And then later on in the spring, I will just transplant this whole container right into probably a food forest area. I'm going to keep my onion varieties really far apart so I can potentially collect 3 different varieties this year. So I got a new clean X-Acto knife. I want to try to get a little bit of root on each one. If there's any one that doesn't have much root, I might just toss it. These roots are actually starting to grow a little bit here. I think I'm just gonna do it by hand here. I could just be planting the whole thing, but I'm gonna do that with some other ones later. I thought it would just be fun to try dividing these up. Now you can actually see them. They've divided almost all the way down. A couple other red ones that started sprouting. They have like 9 shoots. Perfect. It's a nice root there still. There we go. Make sure you're not ripping off any roots. Onions are all made up of leaves, technically. They all grow out from the base root here. My eyes are going now a little bit. This one's pungent. There we go. Got 5 out of that one. So generally you don't want to bury onions very deep. However, I do need these to stand up because they're pretty bulky on top already. So, I'm going to cover them a little bit. You can always pull back the soil a little bit later, but actually in this case it doesn't matter so much because I'm growing these for seed. About 1.5 inches deep I think I'm going. Firmed in there pretty good so they stay standing up. Somewhat close together still, but I am going to transplant the whole thing out into the ground later. So they just something needs to happen with them because they're growing so much already. Clean them off here and give them just a little bit more, and that's it. I'm going to take these and put them back in my southern bedroom window now, just so that they have the consistency of the lengthening days. There's lots of time for onions to be growing now, so this is kind of interesting to see how this works out, what happens with them. It's also a great way to just grow green onions for harvesting. Take the side leaves off. Now let's do this mint here. Got a date on here. It says April 7th from last year. Many months just in these little tiny plugs, and they're still there. Excited to have this peppermint. It's the real, you know, the candy type mint. Spearmint's nice and a little bit more soothing. Peppermint's more sharp and candy-like. Rosemary, hey guys, you're finally gonna get some more space here. There's a few dead ones here. Now rosemary just doesn't overwinter in my climate. Zone 5 to 6 here. Those bigger ones on the side there. Could do some clones, but I probably have enough now. I did want to like sell starts because they're quite in demand. I want to get them pretty pulled apart, something like that. Water really helps to loosen the roots up. Gotta get my labels on my Kelsey onion here. Okay, so these been soaking now for a few minutes. Nice and saturated. Water this soil. Forgot to do that. Certainly smells in here really good. Pungent onion and pungent rosemary. All right, so I finished up here. Rosemary, peppermint, some onion for seed. Got all the newly sown out onion seed for the year. Well, I've got 6 trays here, and I am shooting for over 300 bulbs. So I am gonna do another 4 trays in about 2 weeks when the moon is waning again. This will also give me that succession time for transplanting as well as for harvest. I hope you enjoyed the video. Comment, share, and like, please. Subscribe if you haven't already. Wishing you all an abundant and wonderful growing season ahead.